Welcome back to the first episode of Zero Deliberations with your hosts, Zach and Trevor. And today we're going to be talking about archetypes.
Yeah, our favorite character archetypes. Roll the intro. All right, so you want to get us started here, Zachary?
Hell yeah. Okay, so I'll start with, for any dummies out there, what is an archetype? So I would say a recurring theme or motif or whatever in media or text or whatever.
Yeah, essentially characters kind of have, these characters all have these same traits because you need a certain role. So what's the first one you got on your list, brother?
I'll start with the favorite for me, which is like the initial bad guy, or I guess you could call it rival, whatever, that like ends up coming to the good.
Yeah, so that was an honorable mention I put on here too. The like redeemed villains.
Yeah, like that vibe. And I think the reason is because like I feel like that's me, like that's why everybody likes their favorite usually or whatever, but like it shows the idea to me of you might be, I don't want to call it like rooted in evil, but you come from like a bad way. You're in a bad way. Something about your circumstances has like, you've come out of the filter of life, like you got a chip on your shoulder or something.
Yeah.
Something, But
despite that, you can still be redeemed.
Yeah, like you are willing to give up your ego a little bit to join something greater and like cooperate with people usually in those things.
And it's not always the best mix because there's still that old personality that you were.
They're fighting with it a little bit.
Yeah, and that's always makes for an interesting story because it's, in a lot of cases, relatable because when you change and you grow, it's difficult to acclimate to that right away. So
yeah,
it's like that on a greater scale.
Right, yeah, and it's over and over. It's like almost an essential part in like all kinds of media and shit, right?
Yeah.
It's like, or like text or literature. Yeah, I just think it's like important as well as really cool because it shows that like if you're in a bad way, you don't got to stay in a bad way. You can go to something better. You can find something greater to put yourself to. Find friendship or whatever, love, whatever the fuck it is, Good, like true good.
What are some examples, your favorite examples, if you will?
Well, me, I'm a big Yu-Gi-Oh nerd, so specifically the third anime, 5Ds. It starts out like literally right out the gate as they kind of should or whatever, His friend basically... They were old friends, grew up in the slums together. His friend like got offered a deal to like go to the big city and like get a dueling contract and shit. But he had to steal his friend's shit and like get out of the city with it because he had a dream of like getting out of the slums and shit, So he fucked over his friends. Bro like duels him. They realize that something is weird here. Like we're a part of something bigger and it didn't seem like our dragons wanted to fight each other. So like maybe we should combine our efforts and figure out what the fuck is going on. And that's just like a perfect example that I was watching as like an 8-year-old or whatever.
Yeah.
That like, I'm thinking about it now like, wow, that's dope shit. So, yeah, I don't know. Oh, and then other obvious ones would be like Vegeta, Sasuke, whatever, like initial rival. They get the shit beat out of them or whatever. And then they're like, okay, I know I have more to work for and something greater to be a part of and shit like that.
Yeah, Sasuke's weird because you like watch his kind of decline. You watch that becoming of a villain to then make that redemption arc, which is pretty cool.
It's deep.
Yeah, because like, okay, one of my 2 examples of that archetype is Zuko. If you watch Avatar, I watched it as a kid. But I didn't really appreciate it all.
Yeah.
And then I just recently rewatched it because it's like all on Netflix or whatever, and it's fucking gas. You do see like flashbacks of, how Zuko kind of became this dickhead and why he cares so much about all this shit. But I feel like Sasuke's development, because it was the show started and he was a homie and then he kind of fell, it's a lot more impactful.
And like he had like, it wasn't just like the rival chip on his shoulder. It was my fucked up traumatic life. How about you? What do you have for one?
So my number 1, the smooth talking rogue type character.
Okay, all right.
They have their own kind of set of moral codes. Sometimes it's not for the best and they're kind of just looking out for themselves. They don't they can use a fucking, a gun or a sword if they need to, but for the most part, they can talk their way out of things. Something about that, getting into sticky situations and talking your way out of it instead of resorting to violence right away is just, I don't know. It makes for a much more interesting character.
It's also kind of like they're very like tactile.
Yeah.
Like they have a variety of ways to handle things and shit like that. I appreciate that a lot too out of any character.
Yeah.
For sure. What's an example? I'm trying to think of one.
Well, I mean, the prime example that comes to mind is obviously Han Solo.
Okay, yeah. I'm like, what is the Star Wars one? Are they typically like viewed by the good guys in the thing as good or bad?
So that's the thing of it can vary with the archetype, which is something I like too, is you don't necessarily know. Because Han Solo, he was just kind of like, oh, I'll give you guys a ride. But then they kind of, there was good in him and that came forth. Hondo Naka is a fucking pirate. He's kind of an asshole, and he can sweet talk you while fucking picking your pocket type deal. And I like the dynamic of it, and you don't know.
It can go either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there any examples you could think of a smooth talking rogue you like?
Well, the one that I think of from Yu-Gi-Oh! Again would be Crow, because Crow is like, he's with those two that I mentioned earlier. It was like 4 people initially. Crow was one of them, and he's always like the mischievous one that's doing his own thing, always like on his own shit, very tactile, trying to get out of sticky situations like that, which he does. Like, I guess he has like some.
But he's not like
plot armor.
Another thing I like though about Smooth Talking Rogue is they're not overtly like, if they are villainous, if you were to run into them on the street, you wouldn't know that they're villains as well. That they're
I guess it's a different like thing where he has a little bit of that like anti-hero type of thing where like he's doing kind of bad stuff for a good cause and shit.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's cool as fuck too.
So what's your number 2 pick then?
All right. Number 2, the teacher archetype, or like master, whatever you call it.
Well, which one? Like,
I guess the ones that I think of are like serving as reminders or something of an initial lesson that they've learned or whatever. Like in Yu-Gi-Oh, there might be an initial like teacher, but then later on, there's like, basically dude will come back in the form of like a shining orb in like spirit mode, present himself as like the physical manifestation of good to the character and be like, his name is Jaden, you must remember, fight for blah blah blah, giving him reminders and shit.
You must use the force, Luke.
Yeah, exactly. Where like they're coming back as like a spirit.
So the master who dies before their lesson is fully taught to the student, and the student doesn't realize until after they're kind of passed. Like they weren't able to impart all of their knowledge. There's got to be a fucking snappier term for that archetype.
But yeah, that's a dope archetype. I love the teacher, and I've always appreciated in real life the teacher archetype.
Lord of the Rings fans are gonna hate me. I can't think of his fucking name though. The fucking wizard who he fights. You didn't watch Lord of the Rings, did you?
Yeah, I'm not well versed. I only know like Gandalf.
That's his fucking. I could not think of the name, but yeah, he's like that kind of teacher too. Of like dies kind of early, but then he comes back, and that's the whole lesson can't fully be imparted until they have no choice but to accept that knowledge. And
when they're faced with that, the opportunity to use that knowledge that they've at least been partially granted. Okay, how about you, bro?
So my next one is a villain archetype, because
need that.
Yeah, because it's just in stories, I always feel like it offers the best problems for our heroes, if you will.
Yep.
And that's the mastermind villain archetype. I've accounted all the different variables of what you might do, or you played my trap card, or whatever the fuck type shit.
The main one that sticks out like that would be Pegasus.
Is he the dude that looks like Ghostman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, bro. His Millennium item that he possesses is the Eye, bro, and that allows him to like know every card that his opponent is gonna play and shit like that. The goal for that was to like break it by, you had to counteract fate. Like the Eye allow him to see fate, you have to like go against fate and shit like that, which was pretty fucking cool. But he like found the ancient tablets while he was excavating as an archaeologist.
Like the Book of Fate, if you will, or whatever.
Yeah, like he found the stone tablets that like showed what the card game was back in Egypt, and then he brought it to the masses. Bro had the eye and shit, knowing full well that when they recreated the card game, it was going to like summon up real energy and shit, like remanifestation of an ancient game and shit like that.
Yeah, because like shit like that, there's so much like shit to it of how they're fucking super smart, how they've been conniving. It's like, how the fuck do we beat this? But the heroes find a way, which is the good first the story archetype of nothing is insurmountable. You can overcome anything.
Right. It seems like all the odds are against you and shit.
Yeah. Like this person's fucking been orchestrating everything. They predicted our every fucking move up to this point. How do we beat them?
A lot of times too, especially in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like the villains often have like what they perceive to be an even greater good that they're working towards.
That's always
a thing.
A good written villain always believes what they're doing is the right thing.
Hell yeah, like it's super interesting.
I mean, it's fun sometimes with like the fucking villains who are just bad because they enjoy being bad, but it's only really like good if it's like, I don't know, some sort of fantasy setting or some shit where they're like a fucking demon or some shit. Then it's like, it makes sense. All right, I can understand. But like,
and those characters are cool as well to just throw in there. Like,
they're fun for a bit, but they're not as interesting and don't pose as much of a threat. I feel like
they're not that deep.
So my primary example of this archetype would be obviously Palpatine. He orchestrated the entire Clone Wars, both sides playing bullshit.
Yeah.
He believed what he was doing was good. He wanted order. Sure, tyranny is what he thought was good, but the way he orchestrated everything, playing into, you know, Anakin, knowing that he'd go to the Jedi Order to get him arrested so that he could have Mace Windu come to arrest him, attack him, be like, oh, the Jedi are trying to kill me, so I executed Order 66 and had them all murdered. And he's a great example. But if you're not as familiar with Star Wars, because obviously you seem more familiar with anime, Obito started as Toby, and then he's like, oh, I'm actually Madara or whatever. And
masquerading and shit.
Yeah, masterminding the entire thing. That's been the first episode of Zero Deliberations. Drop a like.
Hopefully people got a good idea as to what an archetype is and shit.
I think they got it.
Hell yeah.
Drop a like if you enjoyed. Comment your favorite archetypes down below.
Let us know what resonates with you or what you like or whatever.
Subscribe for more videos each week. Thursdays at 6. See you then.
Peace.
Fuck, I keep